So welcome everyone. Welcome to the last day of and the last session of Future Skills Week 2022. I hope that you have thoroughly enjoyed the number of expertise, the number of brilliant speakers throughout the week. And if you have attended multiple sessions throughout last week, or not last week, sorry, this week, please make sure that you check out the EDGE accreditation. Okay, the requirements are all outlined in the Future Skills Week website. And for those who have been eagerly waiting for the session yesterday afternoon, we will provide we have the best to the last, yes, just like fine wine, as Morgan said, on the session, Bouncing Back, Resilience, Confidence, and Growth Mindset Hacks. So without further ado, before we launch into the session, we would like you to answer the short question on our Mentimeter, and I will put it into the chat box now. Okay, and it will provide us with some feedback for our evaluation team, just to gauge how Future Skills Week 2022 has been for our students. Please take a couple of minutes just to fill out the short quiz on the Mentimeter on this question. What do you feel are good examples of resilience? And while you're doing that, I'll explain what actually has happened yesterday. And again, sincere apologies about cancelling at the last minute, but through no fault of Katie's. Poor Katie was actually stranded in London for over 7 hours, and unfortunately she couldn't have made it to deliver at the time that she was supposed to yesterday. And you know what? All is grand, all is fine. We are all here now. Katie is here now, and we are super excited and looking forward to today's session. And in a nutshell, this will be an interactive session which will explore how to develop your personal resilience, developing a growth mindset to allow you to bounce back from perceived failures, and how we can utilize mistakes as learning opportunities. And just to give you a little bit of background about Katie, this is just a handful of the number of awards and accolades that Katie has. And if you want to check out the extensive list, please connect with her on LinkedIn. But Katie wears a lot of hats. She's super busy. First of all, she is the founder of the Mind Tribe, which she will talk about in a little bit more detail herself later on. She is the Northern Ireland Young Business Person of last year, and I believe that she has been nominated again this year. She's a multi-award-winning entrepreneur. She's the Director of Global Entrepreneurship UK and Northern Ireland National Director. She's the mental health trainer, lived experience practitioner, growth mindset specialist, and overall a brilliant educational speaker. So with that introduction, Katie, no pressure at all. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Stella, and thank you to everybody who's already been writing in the chat. There's no pressure there for me. Just before we kind of jump in and I start to just tell you a little bit about who I am and then get into the session, I really loved last year. We did this thing at the start of the sessions where everyone put an emoji into the chat about how they were feeling today, or maybe how they felt about the week, or how they feel about the upcoming session. So I would absolutely love if you guys would get involved. I'm going to put one in myself. And please share your emojis. Fab stuff. Oh no, I can see some people are ill. I know, apologies if my throat's going to be going here from the debacle on the planes yesterday. I think I've picked up a cold or something from the aircon. I feel your pain, Lorraine, with the tired. Yep. Lovely ones coming through. Fab stuff. Thank you so much for engaging. So while the last few are continuing to do that, yesterday's session then is about bouncing back, resilience, confidence, and growth mindset hacks. So hopefully you will find today's session useful. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, as it was meant to be yesterday. But as Stella has already said, I was stranded in Heathrow and couldn't get back. So I'd been on a flight from Saudi Arabia and then got stuck. So I couldn't unfortunately do it from the airport, although I did try and look at that option as well. So I'm delighted you're all here. please feel free, to get involved. And as I say, I really hope you enjoy it. So my name is Katie Matthews, as you probably know. And that was, a little bit of an introduction. And again, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We don't need a whole CV rundown. But I've lived in Northern Ireland for 11 years now. So I went to Queen's and then met my partner and stayed. I'm an entrepreneur. So I started my first company when I was 23. And for the last 7 years, have been running that business, but I've also gone on to set up another 3. So I run 4 companies now. And that's, you can see, they're founder of Filer Global and Yeni as well, which are voluntary organizations that I founded. And for me, I absolutely love anything around sort of 4 main pillars around education, entrepreneurship, mental health, and leadership development. So I have 13 years lived experience with mental illness, and it's something I'm always very open speaking about. I was diagnosed with depression when I was 17 and diagnosed with anxiety when I was 22. I'm 30 now, reached the big 30 in January. So it's something that I've still lived with. I still have the diagnoses, I still take my medication, but it's something that I have just learned to manage. And the reason why I like to share that is, one, I like to be very open, honest, and transparent about who I am anyway. But also it's relevant to the session because growth mindset really, really has been such a powerful thing for me to learn and to develop. As Stella said, I'm also the Northern Ireland National Director for the Global Entrepreneurship Network, and last year was appointed as the UK Director for Global Entrepreneurship Week. So if anybody does want to get involved, I've got to do a wee plug here. If anybody does want to get involved with Global Entrepreneurship Week in November this year, give me a shout. And I'll share my details, or if I haven't, I can't remember, I think I put them at the end, my contact details, and connect with me on LinkedIn and things. But if you haven't, if I haven't put them, I think I have, I'll put my email and stuff in at the end for anybody that wants to connect. So just before we jump in, a little trigger or a topic warning. This session hopefully shouldn't be too triggering for anybody. Growth mindset is usually quite a positive topic, but it's just in case if there's anything at all that makes you feel a little bit, uneasy or just triggered in any way, please feel free to have a little break from the screen, to go to the toilet, do whatever you need to do to keep yourself psychologically safe. Okay, so my priority is your mental health and that you look after yourself in any way you need to. And I would always encourage as well, after any session, particularly as well after a full week of doing a program, that you have a little bit of self-care, because sometimes we forget to do that, and take a little bit of time, whether it's 5 or 10 minutes or a half an hour, take a little bit of time and carve that out today just to look after yourself and do something that makes you feel replenished and nourished. So I'm going to save a little bit of time at the end for Q&A, all being well. So the first thing now, Stella or Norman, you're going to have to talk me through here because I know there is a poll option, but I cannot remember how to do it. If anyone can advise me, I can't remember how to do it.
I will figure that out for you. So I will put that question in the poll for you now.
So basically just a yes or no, or yes, no, and a little bit.
Okay, I'll just launch the poll because there's a question right there. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So again, this isn't a test. It's not, nobody's going to be marked on this, but it's just so I get kind of an idea as to whether people have heard of it or if it's completely new to people. Okay, so that's fab. So majority have heard of it at the moment, which is great. Just while we're waiting for the last few responses there, would you mind popping into the chat for me kind of how much you do know about growth mindset, whether it's something that you've studied in detail, if it maybe was from a session that I ran for Future Skills Week last year where you heard about it, or if it's just kind of a word that you've heard of but haven't necessarily done kind of much work around or don't necessarily understand, kind of what it is as such. Perfect. Yeah, relate to fixed mindset. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Holly, for putting that in there. Great stuff. Okay. Who was talking about it today, if you don't mind me asking? Rebecca, if you remember. Who was speaking about it? Fantastic. David Mee was speaking about it. Brilliant. Excellent. Very, very good. Oh, I'll have to watch the recording of David's session. I know he's absolutely fantastic. So that's great. Thank you so much. Um, very good. Well, that's my mission, because nobody really 3 or 4 years ago in Northern Ireland was kind of talking about growth mindset, and it's something I literally talk about all the time. So I'm so pleased to see that other people are starting to talk about it now. Absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for that and for answering the poll. Okay, so embracing a growth mindset changed my life. Now, I know that sounds probably really dramatic, but it really is something that I credit in changing how I view things, how I've been able to recover in terms of mental illness, but also in terms of my businesses. So, Carol Dweck is the lady who theorized growth mindset, and she has a book it's just called Mindset. So if anybody hasn't read it or is planning to, please do. I would say it's so worthwhile. Sometimes it can be a little bit theory heavy, but it's well worth reading more about. So you see a few dates there. Thank you very much, Norma, for putting that in there. On the 14th of December 2018, I was declared bankrupt, and this was at the age of 26 with my first company. So of course, extremely emotional, stressful, upsetting, everything, of course, that goes with that. And I lost absolutely everything. So everything was taken from me. I was in 50 grand's worth of debt that, yes, of course, got written off through the bankruptcy, but that meant I wasn't allowed to leave the country. I wasn't allowed to have a bank account, like paying out mobile phone or anything like that. And I had 45 staff working for me at the time. So, of course, I had to let all the staff go. I had just got a premises that we were redecorating and revamping for a learning centre, and absolutely everything went. They even came and took my car off me. So I lost everything I had. On the 14th of December 2019, that was the date then that I was officially discharged from the bankruptcy register. And in that time, of course, I was really struggling with mental health. And this is when I came across growth mindset. So I'd kind of heard of it in 2017. And then 2018, it became extremely relevant to what we were doing with the children in terms of tuition and education. And then it became even more important for me personally when I was then going through this experience. So I spent 2018, 2019 really kind of learning more and digging a bit deeper around this growth mindset and trying to apply it into my life. And then on the 14th of December 2020 was the date that I was appointed as the Northern Ireland National Director for the Global Entrepreneurship Network. So it was within 1 year of being discharged from the bankruptcy register. In that time, that year that between obviously the 2019 2020, I also started the business again, the tuition one, as a sole trader, and then continued to set up 3 other businesses since then, and found 2 voluntary organizations. So growth mindset really, really has changed my life, and I totally credit it's 2 things: specialized trauma counseling and learning about growth mindset are the 2 things that I really, really credit with changing my life and being able to reach my full potential. So, thank you, Kian. I'll have to look. I haven't heard of that one, the compound effect. Let me write that down really quickly. I will be looking that up. Thank you very much. Any other recommendations and everything, please fire them into the chat there. So, definition of a growth mindset then, what is it? So it is the belief that our talents, intelligence, and abilities can be developed and they can change. This comes through hard work, through effort, through grit, and through perseverance. And it means embracing challenges, embracing questions, but also failure and other obstacles as opportunities to learn and to grow. So on the surface, when we look at that definition, most of the time people think, well, surely don't we all kind of believe that anyway? But as we start to go through, maybe you'll see some of the differences and kind of the power that it really has when we apply it. So somebody mentioned in the chat there as well about fixed mindset. So thank you very much for putting that in there. We think of mindset as a continuum. So we have fixed mindset at one end and we have growth mindset at the other. We'll never fully be in one state or the other. As we're humans, we will never 100% be one or the other, but we will be somewhere on that continuum or somewhere on that scale. So some traits then, when people have a fixed mindset, is it can make them really judgmental. And when I say judgmental, I don't mean, things like, oh no, I don't like her handbag. Oh, I don't like what she did or he did with this. I don't mean judgmental in that way. I mean, everything is very black and white. Everything is pass or failure, correct or incorrect. Everything is extreme in terms of two options for things. Whereas growth mindset is kind of that gray area in the middle as well. And that's the space in which we do our development, we do our learning, we do our growth. With a fixed mindset, then comes a fear of failure. So there's that fear of looking stupid. And as you can see, I put that in quotes because we would never call anybody stupid, but we hear children saying it. We sometimes say it as adults, worrying about what other people are going to think of us. And, oh, do we look good enough? Do we know enough? Are we worth enough? And that fear then of, I'm going to make a fool of myself, or I'm going to look stupid in front of my peers, or perhaps in front of a lecturer. But because of that fear then of failure and that fear of looking stupid, they then seek to look smart. And again, as you can see, that's in our quotes, looking smart. Well, what do we mean by smart? So because there is the fear of failing and that wishing, that seeking to look smart, it means that people with a fixed mindset then start to avoid questions, and they will avoid challenges and avoid obstacles because that would make them vulnerable. And with it then becomes the belief that your talents, intelligence, and abilities are already preset and that they can't be changed. So you may have heard people say things like, oh yeah, but they always get a first. That's just the way they're born. Or she was born good at maths, or he was born good at English. And if anybody again wants to pop into the chat, maybe if you've heard things like that, or maybe even if you said it yourself, we've all said things like that at some stage. It's not for me to sit here and judge people. I'm not sitting here going, oh, I'm the image of perfection. But we're all learning, we're all growing. And until I came across growth mindset, I really did think, oh my goodness, like, my potential was kind of limited to the ability that I was born with. Then on the flip side of fixed mindset, we of course have growth mindset traits. So with a growth mindset comes flexibility. And what I mean by flexibility in this context is flexibility in thinking and the ability to find solutions, to be able to adapt, okay, to have that resilience and to have that creativity to say, okay, well, this hasn't worked, but let's look at what we can do. There is a big focus on improvement. Okay, so when we want to improve, we're more likely to expose our shortcomings. We're more likely to make ourselves voluntarily vulnerable in order to improve. And with that then comes embracing of questions, of challenges, of failures. And we see those then as opportunities to learn and to grow. Okay, so we see mistakes, we see failure, what we perceive as failure, as just another opportunity, as something that, yes, it's unfortunate, but we all know we're going to make mistakes at some point. We're human, we're always learning. And how can we then learn from that experience? And then, as I said in the definition, that it is the belief that our talents, intelligence, and abilities can be developed, and that comes through hard work, grit, effort, and perseverance. So as I said, growth mindset, then we think of it as a continuum. So we have a fixed state and a growth state. But as humans, because of the nature of being human, we will never fully be in one state or the other 100%. We'll always be somewhere on that scale. And because growth mindset is focused on progress, it's focused on consistent improvement, and there always being that room for progress and development. If you are truly embracing a growth mindset, it means that you will never fully achieve one. So I know that sounds a bit strange. So I'm just going to say that again. If you are fully embracing a growth mindset, it means you will never fully achieve one. So growth mindset isn't something that we pass or fail at. It's not something we do an exam in and we tick off and we say, right, that's me now, perfect. I've got a growth mindset. Because as soon as we do that, we actually undermine that and go into a fixed mindset state where we're only focused on the product, we're only focused on the outcome, the thing at the end, as opposed to everything else we had to do to get to that point. We forget about the journey, we forget about the progress, the learning journey that we've gone on. And as I say, that then switches us into a fixed mindset state. So if you're going to fully embrace a growth mindset, you'll believe that there's always room for improvement, there's always room for progress, and it means that you will never ever fully achieve one because you will always be striving for progress. Does that make sense to people? I hope, can people pop into the chat for me? Just yes or maybe no, if you want me to explain it a little bit further, but hopefully that's good stuff. Good. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So, let me just read that there. So are you saying people aren't preset or have certain traits before they come into work regardless of the information they gives you? It's not destiny. It's not that people don't have, certain kind of traits or maybe talents and things, because of course there are things that we are naturally good at. But growth mindset says that just because you maybe haven't been born with what we say as being gifted at something or having a specific talent, it's the belief that we can always learn and grow and we can always develop that. So what we're born with doesn't necessarily limit us, if that makes sense. So I hope that answers that. But of course, at the end, we can always go back into a little Q&A or I can clarify. Perfect. Thank you. So growth mindset development, then, these aren't things that I've just made up that they improve. There were studies done. You can check them out yourself, particularly in Microsoft. And Carol Dweck did a lot of work, obviously, through Stanford University, and looking in, education settings, but also then looking in corporate environments about how growth mindset can really change the culture, because people are more prepared to admit or to ask for help when they don't understand something. And therefore, they're more likely to improve and to grow. So it can improve your grit, i.e., your resilience and your kind of determination, your effort, your focus, your confidence, the ability to problem solve. I won't go through all of them. I'm sure you've probably read them all by now, me saying that. But you can see these are all fantastic things to be developed. There's nothing there that we would say, oh, no, I don't want too much of that. So in terms of yourself, then, what can be a really, really good starting point in thinking about embracing a growth mindset is looking at your zones. So this is an activity that you can actually do. If you want to, you can sit here and do it as I'm speaking, or it's something I can always send you, a worksheet over afterwards, or you can go onto my website and get them for free. And all you do is really simple. You just draw 3 circles inside each other. And the one in the middle, your green zone, then is your comfort zone. So we've all heard that phrase, haven't we? A comfort zone. And it's the space in which we're free from anxiety. It's the space where we feel nice and relaxed. And this is the space in which we already know things. We already know what's going to happen, or we already have the knowledge about something. So we're in that comfort space. And what can happen on the flip side of that when we're in our comfort zone is that possible boredom can occur because we're not being stretched, we're not being challenged. And that's what you'll find a lot of the time when you hear people speaking about their workplace, that they are actually quite bored because they're doing the same thing every day and they know what to expect. They're not having any challenges, they're not having any opportunities to learn and to grow, and then they become bored and disengaged. In the next circle out, then we have our stretch zone. So this is the space that is more challenging, of course, but it's also the space in which we're more likely to take risks, we're more likely to succeed, we're more likely to grow and develop, as that space is our optimal zone for learning. Okay. And it's the space, as we say, where you're just stepping out that comfort zone and trying to challenge yourself or take that learning a little bit further. Now, what can happen sometimes, and we see this a lot in education settings, is that people try, perhaps lecturers or teachers and things, try and push people too far too quickly in terms of their development. And they actually end up going too far and spilling out into the danger zone then. And what happens here is that we feel really overwhelmed, we feel really stressed, our fight or flight response is triggered. So there's actually 5 survival responses, just in case anybody's interested. So you have fight, flight, freeze, flop, and friend. That's a mouthful. But most of the time we've heard of fight or flight. So would you mind popping that into the chat for me as well, actually? Have you heard of that, fight or flight, or did you know about the 5 different ones? Most of us kind of just know of it as fight or flight. And that's our fact. Yep. Yeah, so there's 5. And that's what, as I say, most people, we just know fight or flight, or some people have heard of freeze as well. Thank you for putting that in there, Norman. That's great. And what can happen then is our performance actually starts to decrease because we're so overwhelmed. Again, to ask you guys into the chat, have you ever been so overwhelmed with work or so stressed with assignments and deadlines that you're not actually able to achieve your full potential? You don't necessarily feel as if you've been able to fully commit to something or fully engage with something or achieve the best results you wanted to. Absolutely, yeah, because you're so overwhelmed. And so, yeah, a lot of us have been there then, where we're thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm not actually achieving what I know I'm capable of, because we're in that space. We're in that zone where we're in fight or flight, and our body is essentially running off adrenaline and lots of other chemicals and hormones. But we can't think straight, is a kind of a whittled down way of saying it. We're not able to learn. We're not able to absorb information. Now, this is scientific. We're not able to absorb new information when our body is in a fight or flight state. So that's why you can sometimes sit in a lecture and come out of it and feel as if you've not learned anything. And it's nothing to do with the fact that, maybe you weren't engaging, or you maybe the teaching wasn't right. I'm not gonna dwell on that. But you may feel as if you haven't fully gained enough from that session if you're already in that stressed fight or flight state, because we're not able to absorb new information, because our body is just focused on surviving at that moment, as opposed to looking at long-term progress and development. So there's a 3-letter word. Now, for anybody that has learnt about growth mindset, you're not allowed to respond just yet, all right? Because you probably know the answer already to this. But I would love to hear from you guys some guesses about what this 3-letter word might be. So it's the power of something. And it's 3 letters. It's very, very powerful. And I like this. See, I like this because when people put in suggestions, they're always really, really good ones that it could be anyway. So it's not you, but thank you for guessing, Lauren. Anybody else going to embrace their growth mindset and have a guess? Good stuff. So not quite. No one's got it yet. Maybe I'll be nice and let the other ones join in a sec. So another 10 seconds just for anybody maybe that hasn't heard of it to give it a guess. And then we'll unleash everyone else. Hopefully someone's got the answer. Okay, so power of yes, you're very close. You've got 2 letters. 2 of them. Rebecca's straight in on it. She's got it. Fantastic. So it is actually the power. That's okay, Brenda, don't you worry. You pop in and out and there'll be recording available afterwards. It is the power of yet. So this word yet really is, I like PMA, positive mental attitude, very good, as opposed to PMT, but we won't go into that. So the power of yet really, really can be harnessed, and it's one of the main things that underpins growth mindset development. So if we were to just say, oh, I can't do that, or we're hearing people, maybe we said it to ourselves, or to, we've heard someone else say it, oh, I'm just never going to be able to learn this. I'm never going to be able to do it. What's the point? I can't do X, Y, Z. And how does that sound? So again, if you want to pop into the chat, how do those phrases sound? How does it make you feel? If absolutely, yeah. So defeated, great words here. Negative, yeah. Fantastic. Any other wee words at all? Disappointed, defeated, yeah, absolutely. So it has that that negative kind of attitude, doesn't it? And those negative connotations where you just think, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. Dejected, lovely. This is great. This is like a thesaurus. So fantastic. Thank you for your contributions. And what about on the deflated? Love that. Kian's like, right, I've got I've got another one here. What about then on the flip side of that? So if we take those same phrases and we say, okay, well, I can't do that yet. I don't know how to do that yet. I haven't learnt this yet. How does that sound? How do those phrases and words start to sound if we just put that one word, we just put in that 3-letter word on the end? Absolutely. Yeah. So it changes the tone, more promising, hopeful, optimistic, encouraging, motivating, positive, determined. My goodness me, I love this. Excellent. Thank you so much. So again, a possibility, absolutely positive. So you can see there, just from that 3-letter word, how it can change the way you think and feel about something. It implies hope. We've got those possibilities that are opened up to us when we put that word on the end. And that was one of the things that I started doing when I was bankrupt. And it was one of the first things that I started doing that was super easy for me was whenever I said something like, oh, I just can't do it, I would just put that word yet on the end. Because my mental health was the worst it's ever been, as I'm sure you can imagine. And if I'm being totally honest, so again, a trigger warning here. If I'm being totally honest, I didn't want to be here anymore. That's how low I got. And I just thought, what is the point? What is the point in anything anymore? Everything I've failed. I've just failed at everything. People are going to look at me and judge me and think, what does she know? How is she coming back from? How is she going to, bounce back? How's she going to come back from this when she's let herself down? So one of the small things that I started to do each day was to include this word yet. And it was so powerful because it allowed me to rebuild my hope. It allowed me to say, well, do you know what, Katie? Just because you've messed up, just because you've made a mistake, it doesn't define who you are. It's just part of your learning journey. Just because you don't know how to do something yet doesn't mean you're never going to be able to do it. And one of the biggest things for me was actually opening up and asking for help. Oh, thank you. That was the biggest thing for me was opening up and asking for help. And again, if you feel happy to, you don't have to pop into the chat. Have you ever been in, a situation, you don't have to disclose, but have you ever been in a situation where you think to yourself, I'm never going to be able to come back from this. I've messed up too much. I'm never going to be able to achieve the things that I want to do. And does that prevent you then from asking for help? Because a lot of us, we hear people, yeah, absolutely. So we hear people saying that, we see on social media, just reach out, ask for help. But sometimes it's not just as easy as doing that. It's not just simply a case of saying, I need help with this, because it's all the emotion that's tied into that. It's the fact that we have to, again, as I said, make ourselves voluntarily vulnerable. We're putting ourselves in a situation to say, I don't know this and I need help. And that can be scary, whether that is, just whether it's an assignment or not just, but whether it's an assignment or whether it's with mental illness, whether it is with finance, anything at all. It's scary when we put ourselves out there and we say, I don't know this. So somebody had just written in there, let me scroll up. I'd send something. Yeah, that Brenda said, absolutely. Yeah, there's more learning in failure than doing right. So one of the things that I started to say to myself, it was because I heard another entrepreneur say it and with their wisdom. And they said to me, done is better than perfect. And, thank you for the nice comments coming in here. Yeah, absolutely. Feeling like there's no way out. And it's so important to seek that help. And even just having those conversations can make you feel better straight away. And I don't mean obviously you go, oh, that's me, all my problems are solved. But it alleviates some of that pressure just by having those first conversations. And if you come away from this today and you think, right, I'm going to reach out and ask for help, please feel free to message me. I'm more than happy, After last year's Future Skills Week, I've kept in touch with a lot of students that actually emailed me afterwards and said, this resonated with me, or could you signpost me to this support service? And we're still in touch, and I check in them every now and again. So if you feel like I'm the right person, please feel free to reach out to me. But of course, you've got, within the university, you've got your wellbeing department, and even outside of the university, we usually have somebody that we can kind of go to that we trust. So again, thank you for your contributions. So that, of course, wasn't super in depth. I deliver a whole 2.5-hour course on growth mindset. So this is me kind of trying to condense it into the main points. But as I say, if you do want to learn more about it, please, read Carol Dweck's book. And of course, you can always come along to one of my sessions where we kind of really deep dive, is the phrase in business, into growth mindset. But what I want to do is provide you with some strategies, because I think that is really important, that we actually come away from the session and say, okay, these are things that I can do and I can do immediately. Because I don't know if you guys have ever had this before, but sometimes when you go to a session and you think, okay, well, yeah, that was a nice chat, or I enjoyed it and I was engaged with it, but I haven't necessarily got anything concrete that I can take away from this now. What can I actually go away and implement? So some strategies then that we can implement to support our growth mindset development. So positive affirmations is a great way of not only supporting your overall mental health and well-being, but for developing a growth mindset. Some people like to say it to themselves in the mirror. I think my partner might think I was a bit strange if I was saying, you can do this, I am fantastic, in the bathroom mirror to myself. But for me, I just like to say them in my head. Some people prefer to write them down. Some people will even write them on their mirrors, or actually have little post-it notes stuck on maybe fridges and things, so that they're reminded, they're affirming it every day. And it helps, as you can see there with the wee picture, to strengthen your values and also then to live your values. And that's something I'm always speaking about, is living your values. We hear sometimes, it can sound a bit cliche, but when people say, leading by example, or you have to live and act in the way that you're preaching, so you're not being a hypocrite, basically. But that's something I really do believe in, is living your values. And for me, when I'm really struggling with mental illness, and in terms of recovery and going through trauma and different adverse experiences, I never felt worthy. I never felt that I was worthy of success, or worthy of love, worthy of support. I used to think, why would people want to help me? Why would they look at me and think that I was worthy? But that's something now that I tell myself, and it's just something I have to say to myself in the morning when I wake up, or when I'm going to sleep. I just remind myself that I am worthy. I am good enough. And one of the phrases that I really loved, I did a session in Ometha, excuse me, a couple of weeks ago for International Women's Day with mothers and daughters. And there was a little 11-year-old girl, and we were talking about this, feeling like we're not good enough. Excuse me. And it was so lovely. She looked at me and she just said, Katie, why would you say that? You're good enough for everyone. And I just thought that was the loveliest thing. You're good enough for everyone. So that's something now that I've adopted. And again, that's something I say to myself when I'm thinking about, not feeling maybe confident, or feeling as if maybe I shouldn't be in a room. For some of you that were here earlier, you may have heard me mention, about flying back from Saudi Arabia yesterday. And I was at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress. And for me, there was part of me that thought, why am I getting to go to this? Why have I been invited? What do I know? Why do they want me there? Why am I being able to meet all these amazing people, and meet Steve Wozniak, and meet the founder of Netflix, and meet the ambassador at the embassy? There was all these things, and I thought, how am I in this position? Thanks, Norman, you have to say that. So but again, I had to talk myself through it and say, no, I am worthy. There's a reason why I've been asked to go to this, and I need to feel confident in myself and my ability. Another thing that can really help with it is meditation and visualizations. So when I was going through the bankruptcy in that year, when I was kind of recovering and trying to kind of build that confidence back, is I used to visualize the person that I wanted to become, the person that is living my values, how I wanted to structure my life. And yes, Magda, yes, self-care is not a luxury, it's a priority. Absolutely. And it's something that sometimes we forget. And that's why, again, at the start of the session, I always try and encourage that, because self-care isn't something, it's not. I did a whole session on this. So if anybody wants to watch a YouTube video, last year I did a whole session on it for Future Skills Week. It goes beyond bubble baths. So that was the name of the session. It goes beyond, just maybe doing a face pack, as some people traditionally think of, self-care is just sitting there and pampering yourself. But it's actually nurturing yourself. It's nourishing you. It's maybe taking your medication. It's maybe setting boundaries. It's maybe cutting toxic people out of your life. It could just be doing something that you absolutely love that restores and re-energizes you. It could be having a nap. It could be, that'll be me today after this. So it's so that session, I think it's on Ulster University Careers YouTube channel. And there should be, if you need me to send it over afterwards, I can do. Or maybe one of the guys will be able to find a link for it. But yeah, it's definitely on the Ulster Careers channel. So then we can think about setting smart goals. So has anybody ever been in the position where you set yourself a target and you've already set yourself up for failure before you've even started to work towards it? So what I mean by that is maybe it was a goal that was too big at that moment in time. Maybe you didn't have the resources. Maybe, yep. Absolutely. And we all do it. We all think, I do it every week and say I'm starting a diet on Monday. I've been saying that since I was like about 18. So every week I go start that on Monday. And we set ourselves these goals, absolutely looking, at that bigger picture all the time and thinking that we can achieve everything. And it doesn't mean, I'm not sitting here, saying to people, lower your standards, lower your ambition, because no, you want to have that. But I like to call it realistic expectations, which of course we've all heard of, but I always call it realistic optimism. So toxic positivity is dangerous when people are just saying, just be positive, you can dream and do anything that you want to do. I'm not undermining that and saying that you can't, but what I am saying is that you have to have a plan in place. You have to make things relevant and specific and measurable and achievable. Because if we are setting ourselves targets that are too big or that we're not ready for yet, or that we haven't got the resources to achieve, all we're doing is setting ourselves up for failure. So what happens is it reinforces that fixed mindset approach of, here's another thing that I can't do. Here's another thing that I failed at. As opposed to breaking it down into those smaller, more manageable chunks or more manageable objectives, and then feeling proud of ourselves and taking that learning from those and realizing that they all feed into that bigger objective. So for me, some days, and again, living with mental illness, some days it's hard for me to even get up and have a shower or brush my teeth or speak to people or answer a phone call. And sometimes my goal for that day is to do just those. It's to get out of bed. It's to make sure that I eat a proper meal. And then there's other days where it's, I want to go and secure a contract for something, or I'm going to go and speak to this lord or this minister, or, so it doesn't have to just be massive goals. If we break them down, we can make them more achievable for ourselves. And as such, we get that sense of fulfillment every time we're achieving and ticking off those smaller goals. You can also explore famous failures. Again, this is in me quotes. I just like it because it's alliteration. So people maybe like Walt Disney or Oprah Winfrey, people that have been through experiences, people that have been through adversity or trauma, or told that they weren't good enough or told that they weren't going to achieve something. I think Walt Disney was told 300 times. I think was turned down 300 different occasions and told that his idea was stupid. Now look where it is. So having a look at other people can be fantastic because That's where we get our role models from. Also making a vision board. So mine is actually downstairs. I was just looking to see if I had it up here, but it's downstairs. Every year I create a vision board and I update it, of course, again throughout the year, but I put on there the overarching things that I want to achieve, that I want to be, that I want to feel. And again, it's not just things that are absolutely massive goals, for business or for myself, but it can be the small things that I want to feel happier. I want to practice a little more self-care every day and make sure that I am taking 10, 15 minutes out for myself. So one of the images that I put on there was a big symbol of an eye to represent focus. So, and you put it somewhere that you're going to see it every day, and your subconscious mind is always going to be picking up on that then. And it kind of just reminds you of what you're trying to achieve. Also recognizing triggers, and as you probably kind of connecting already between the exercise with the 3 circles, what is a trigger for you? So what pushes you from that stretch space into the danger zone? What acts as those triggers? Okay. Also journaling. So journaling can be a great way of getting, the thoughts out your head or even just kind of processing. And also mentoring or coaching. So a lot of people, particularly really successful people, will always have a mentor or a coach. They're great, for bouncing ideas off, for getting a different perspective, and also perhaps, if they have industry specific knowledge in terms of what you're trying to develop in as well. We can also then do personal development courses. So even the fact that, you're coming to something like this today, that's about your personal development. It's about learning something new, connecting with different people, hearing different ideas, and also taking time to reflect on our goals, but also taking time to reflect on the progress that we've made. Because sometimes, again, I don't know if you guys do this, I'm so bad at doing this and I have to remind myself all the time to actually reflect and take stock. Because when our to-do lists are so long and we're thinking, right, yep, tick that off, tick that off, tick that off, that's fine. What's the next thing? And sometimes we don't just sit and take those 5 minutes to reflect and say, well done to ourselves and say, oh my goodness me, yes, I have achieved this. Let me be proud of myself and enjoy the moment for a few minutes rather than just looking forward and say, right, what's the next thing I need to do? What's the next thing I need to do? So just taking that little bit of time. Monitoring our self-talk is really important. The only voice we're never going to escape from is the voice in our heads. So we need to use that kindly. We need to speak gently to ourselves and be, empathetic towards ourselves, because half the time we say things to ourselves that we would never say to other people. And again, I can hold my hand up. I don't know if anybody wants to do a little hand emoji with their hand up. Preach, join the club. But, have you been in that position where there's things that you say to yourself that you would never say to other people? You wouldn't say them to someone else. You wouldn't say them to someone that you love or that you're friends with. Yeah, so I can see some hands coming up. Absolutely. Yep. More than happy to admit that. Yep. And we all do it. And again, you can see here already. That's why I kind of like to see this, is that we can all see that we all do it. We all do it. We're all human. We all do it. But let's look at the voice from a different perspective. Let's look at it as a friend. Because if we wouldn't say it to someone else, why do we think it's okay to say it to ourselves? We spend most of our time with ourselves. So we need to learn to make friends with that. And we also need to learn to forgive ourselves for things. And that was one of the biggest things that I took away from the bankruptcy, was learning to forgive myself for the mistakes that I had made. Feedback from others can be obviously another fantastic way of developing your growth mindset, and looking for the learning in the feedback, not just thinking, that this is just criticism, but taking it constructively and looking at how we praise ourselves, how we give feedback to ourselves, but also how we give feedback to others and how others give feedback to us, and what the value is in that feedback they're providing. Of course, I've mentioned Carol Dweck's growth mindset book, just called Mindset. You've also got this book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, another fantastic read. Really important, I think, as well, is to deconstruct your mistakes and to deconstruct those perceived failures. So I actually did this after the bankruptcy. I took a big A3 sheet of paper and I sat down and I wrote down all the factors that led to that failure. I wrote down everything that happened, everything I did, everything I said, the decisions I made, the poor decisions I made as well, not asking for help. And I wrote down all these factors and looked at that and said, okay, well, what can I learn from each of these? How do I need to behave? How do I need to think differently in order to move forward from this? And as you can see, since coming off the bankruptcy register, I haven't even been off it 3 years. Yeah, I came off it December 2019. So December this year, I'd have been off the register 3 years. And you can see how I've been able to progress and bounce back from that. And of course, I'm not undermining it by just saying, oh, just bounce back. It wasn't, just a simple process, but it can take time. But you can see it doesn't have to take, a decade. This is 2.5, 3 years down the line, and I'm now back in those directorship positions and actually in a better position than I was before the bankruptcy. I'm actually achieving the things that I wanted to and realizing my potential because I'm embracing that growth mindset and being prepared to learn from other people and ask for help. Another thing that comes with that then is asking growth mindset questions to ourselves. So I think I've done a whole slide on this. Yeah. So what questions then can we ask ourselves to support our growth mindset development? So these are things that I ask myself every day. And again, you don't have to do, every single one of them, but even just starting with one of them. And that can be maybe your question for the week or your question for the month. What did I do today to challenge myself? Did I ask for help with anything I needed support with? Did I make any mistakes today that I could learn from? So a lot of the time, we just think about the first part and we go, these are the mistakes that I made today. But we don't do that second piece of how can I learn from them? What did I learn from them? What can I do tomorrow to have maybe a more productive or an improved day? Asking ourselves, is this really my best work? Am I happy with this? Am I happy with the effort that I've put into XYZ, whatever it is? And as I mentioned, that self-talk, then we've said the only voice we're never going to escape from is that voice in our head. We want to make friends with it. We want to use it kindly and understanding we're all human. We all make mistakes, and it's about how you learn and grow from them. So honestly, about mental illness and going through bankruptcy, because I'm proud of myself. And beforehand, I would have been afraid to say that because we're told, don't be arrogant and don't boast about things. But it's not boasting to say that you're proud of yourself. It's okay to be proud. It's okay to love yourself. And it's okay to be proud of what you've achieved. It doesn't mean you have to be arrogant, but you can be confident in yourself and what you have done. And also, as you can see there at the bottom, the last thing I said there is about forgiving yourself again. It's okay to forgive yourself. And actually saying that, when I was going through the counseling for the trauma, I actually had to say to myself every day, I forgive you. I forgive me for what happened. One thing that's really important as well with growth mindset, we've said about fixed mindset is very focused on the results, about achieving this or this. You've passed or you failed. It's thinking about the whole process, not just the product. And what comes with that then is praising that process, not just earning or feeling that we've earned or achieved worthiness and achieved or been allowed to achieve, allowed to receive, my goodness me, I'm tired, allowed to receive praise when we have achieved a first or when we've got 100% or when we've won on something. But praising ourselves for the learning journey, praising ourselves for that whole process as opposed to just the product. So these are the other things that we can praise ourselves for. Effort, focus, attention to detail, problem solving, listening skills or other skills, concentration, trying something new, communication. There's so many other things that we can praise ourselves for in that learning journey and in that process, as opposed to just the product, as opposed to just that final outcome. And you remember that from last year? Yeah. So we really are. We are our own bodyguards. We are our own cheerleaders. And that's okay, because if we don't do that, who else is going to? Now, I mentioned this already. I touched on this about, has anybody heard of this, by the way, that toxic positivity idea? I'd love to know in the chat there again if anyone's heard of it. So Positivity, yes, we know what that is, but toxic positivity is something we see quite a lot on social media, where everything's fantastic, my life is great, I'm achieving everything that I want to, and we're all guilty of putting up posts, that have some sort of filter, whether physical or metaphorical. Yeah, good vibes only. And all that there, hashtag live my best life, and you're great, I'm not. So we can it can have a really detrimental effect on our mental health and well-being when positive, particularly for people that live with mental illness, because I go, God, that's really interesting. Do you not think I tried that? Haven't tried just being positive. I didn't know that was going to solve all my mental illness problems. You know, being positive isn't enough. It's not as easy as that. We can't just flick a switch and say, that's me positive. So that's when it becomes toxic, because you just think to yourself, this is another thing that I failed at. It's another thing that I can't do. Why can't I just be positive? So yeah, absolutely. Having those breaks from social media, and at the start of the year, I went on a bit of a detox and just cut everyone off that I didn't want to follow, and I didn't want to see their stuff anymore because it was making me sad. I was comparing myself and saying, "Oh my goodness, look what they've achieved. They've done this, they've done that," and then absorbing it as some sort of failure of my own, that I hadn't done that, even though it wasn't. So I had to learn to, it's something that I still have to do, is to put that barrier around myself. And that's why I said last year about being your own security guard. You can hear and see things, but you can choose what you absorb and take on as your own. And that's where the power comes from, because you have that control. Our brains are more likely, 10 times more likely actually, to hold on to something negative than to something positive. So you can see you have to do 10 times the amount of work to hold on to something that is positive. So instead of toxic positivity, I always say realistic optimism. So we don't have to lower our standards. We don't have to not be ambitious, but we need to, yes, of course, still have that element of positivity, which is where the optimism comes in, which links in with our hope, but being realistic as well. Because when we are unrealistic and we have unrealistic expectations of ourselves, as I mentioned previously, all we're doing is setting ourselves up for failure. And it reinforces that idea then that we're a failure. So I'm just going to whiz through this little bit, because I can see already I've been speaking for an hour. My goodness me, I'm sorry. So I would just love, just literally 10 seconds, see who can type the quickest. Some words and ideas that we associate with resilience. What sorts of words or ideas do we think of when we hear that term resilience? Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yep. So reflecting what you guys have said already. And you've actually put in some more than I have as well. So well done. It could be flexibility, strength, persistence, resistance, toughness, being determined. And also I always like to put in there, just as a little kind of playing devil's advocate, maybe is it a buzzword? Because I think in recent years, particularly, resilience is this term that's being thrown around a lot, but we don't necessarily understand what it is or how to develop it. So what is resilience then? So our definition of resilience is the ability to recover from or easily adapt after adversity, trauma, stress, or change. Now, I always condense it into this one word of bounce back ability. So that ability to bounce back. And again, when I say that, I don't mean to undermine people's experiences, because it's not always just going to be a straightforward linear trajectory. There are going to be messes in there and tangles and, setbacks. But it's that ability to keep going and to easily adapt and to recover after we are experiencing challenge. So some strategies then for building resilience. I'm just going to whiz through these ones. Self-efficacy, so that actual belief in yourself that you can achieve things. We want to think about perspective and hope. So again, you could see from earlier how that links in with the growth mindset. If you develop a growth mindset, a byproduct of that is that you automatically develop your resilience as well. Smart goal setting, growth mindset development, authenticity, and self-acceptance. And I think that's really important as well. It's not just, self-love and sitting there going, oh my goodness, I'm such a good person. But it's self-acceptance, accepting yourself for who you are at your core, and also maintaining a sense of humor. So that was me yesterday. I'm sure, well, you can let me know in the chat again. Have you heard that phrase of if you didn't laugh, you'd cry? You probably have done. Most of us would have heard of that. Yeah. If you didn't laugh, you'd cry. But there really is kind of truth in that, that if we maintain that sense of humor, it allows us to be flexible. It allows us to not be so emotionally triggered by things, that we can adapt and we can be flexible. Persistence. And of course, linking in with that, as I've already mentioned, is that flexibility, which of course links in with our growth mindset. Flexibility in terms of finding solutions, being creative in our thinking, and also remaining open-minded. Allowing yourself time to rest. Resilience is something that we need to develop, but we also have to nourish ourselves along the way. So again, as we said about things like self-care, allowing ourselves time to rest. And I think off the top of my head, you may want to look this up yourself. I think there's 7 different types of rest. So a lot of the time people just think of rest as, that's why I put this picture in, just lounging in a hammock or sleeping. But there are actually 7 types of rest, and different forms of rest. Social skills and building those social connections. Again, great way of developing resilience, meeting different people, hearing different perspectives. Absolutely, you're right. Restoration is vital. Self-regulation. So learning about, connecting with yourself, developing that self-awareness. Yes, there we go. Thank you, Norma, for putting that in there. 7 types of rest. Opportunities to be creative. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have to sit down and paint something, but for some people it might be cooking, dancing, doing some sort of art, maybe doing yoga, writing. There's loads of ways that you can be creative. It might be playing music or singing. And also giving yourself opportunities to problem solve. And one of the biggest things that has been reinforced actually from being at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress and hearing the likes of Steve Wozniak and founder of Netflix speaking, they reminded us that along the way, you are going to have 100 ideas and probably 1, 2, or 3 of them are going to actually be decent. But it's that problem solving. This is one of the quotes, was fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So it's the problem that you fall in love with, the thing that you want to keep solving, and allowing yourself to be flexible in how you solve it. So as opposed to falling in love with what you think is the solution and not moving on it, you fall in love with, and you're able to dissect that, or you're able to be more flexible. Exactly, yeah, the thing that keeps you awake at night, absolutely. So also think about the value in mistakes. And you've heard me mention that, quite a lot throughout. This is the value that comes from mistakes and the learning that comes from failure. Doing mindfulness activities, because it's great not only for the health benefits that come with mindfulness. There's another session actually on mindfulness from last year's Future Skills Week that I did. So again, you can find that on the Ulster Uni Careers YouTube channel. Mindfulness is great for developing that relationship with yourself, understanding yourself, but also, as I say, the health benefits then that come from that as well. And also having that empathy for others. So what we have to remind ourselves of is the only ways that we're going to build and cultivate resilience is through experiencing some sort of challenge, adversity, or failure. Let me ask you a question. Was anybody in the room or in the virtual room born walking? Did anybody, how can I put this in a nice way? Come out, maybe we'll word it. Enter the world. Did anybody enter the world already walking? No, exactly. We didn't and say, I'm here, that's me now, I'm away to the shops. We didn't we didn't just enter the world already doing that. So what happened? What did we do first? What did you to do? I don't remember. So we learned to crawl. Yeah, absolutely. We were crying, we were crawling, we were trying to communicate, we were trying to learn, we were learning to walk. So we can all relate to that. We didn't just automatically achieve the ultimate goal. We had to continue to make mistakes. We had to continue falling down over and over and over again until we learned a little something from it each time that allowed us to figure things out, exactly, Brenda, and to get to the ultimate goal. And sometimes as adults, we start to go into that fixed mindset where we forget. We forget that that children are really good at this. Their children are really resilient because they're able to they don't have that same social kind of pressures that we feel as adults and that fear of judgment. So they're more likely to engage and more likely to fail at something because that's how we learn. Couple of things just to remember as I'm going to wrap up now, and thank you for bearing with me, is that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. So asking for help is a sign of strength because you are voluntarily making yourself vulnerable in order to improve. And again, that supports your growth mindset development because you understand that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's allowing you to improve and it's allowing you to make progress. I always put in just a wee slide about, who you can go to if you need help for anything. You've got your university wellbeing department. I think there were some links in there earlier. You've got different charities, educators, community groups, mentors. And again, you can contact me if you need anything at all. And a final thought to just kind of reflect on and to remember is that great works are not performed by strength. They're performed by perseverance. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for your time. Please keep in touch. And you can see there's my details. I'm also going to pop into the chat here quickly my email. Okay. So if anybody does want to reach out to me, if you want signposts or any support services, if you want any mindfulness colouring sheets, there's loads of free downloads at my website. And please feel free, to give me a shout. I'm more than happy now to open up for a Q&A. Obviously, I appreciate if some people have to go. But as I say, thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to sit round and stay here if anybody does have anything that they want to ask or anything they want me to clarify. Thank you so much. What lovely comments coming through. And then I will hand back to, thank you, Dara. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I always leave these sessions feeling like, thank you so much. So yes, that is me. I'll wrap up and hand back over to Stella. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Katie. As always, another amazing session. And judging by all the thank yous, by all the comments that are coming through the chat box, everybody has thoroughly enjoyed it. So absolutely amazing. Again, Katie, can't thank you enough. And it's absolutely worth the wait. And you would not have guessed that you're absolutely sleep deprived and probably jet lagged. Sometimes I just come into your sessions, and no matter how many times I have seen you deliver, I just find myself fully immersed into it. And I just halfway through, I realized that I was supposed to be manning the chat room. But I'm sure like the rest of the students would agree with me that they have found this super useful, and what a way to end our Future Skills Week 2022. So guys, just
sorry, I'd put them.
Sorry, what was that?
No, I was talking to myself. I was about to say, I put the slide on for tomorrow, and then I was like, I realized it is tomorrow. So
that's okay, no problem at all. So guys, just to kind of wrap up, please do feel free to ask Katie any question in the chat box. While you are doing that, I'm just going to wrap up with regards to Future Skills Week. There will be evaluations sent out to all the participants, like even if, not just for this session, but for sessions throughout the week. Please do take your time to fill out the evaluation form. It will be sent to your email. It would really help us and our evaluation team. Also, don't forget about age. So as I said before at the start, if you have attended multiple sessions throughout the week, you are eligible to apply for the Edge, one of your Edge activities for your Edge award. Okay, and thanks very much, Norman. And I will actually stop recording this session because the nature of the topic for the Q&A part. So feel free to ask Katie any question. I'm sure Katie won't mind to hang around just for a little bit longer. And if you're brave enough, yes, please do unmute yourself and you can ask Katie verbally as well. Okay, so I'll